Hello, my name is Misty Yarnall, and I'm featured in Writers Books and Literary Partners series. Just a little bit of background about me. I grew up in Watertown, New York, which is about 2.5 hours from Rochester. I currently go to MCC as a creative writing and English major, and I primarily write fiction. I'm dabbling with some short plays right now, but it's mostly fiction. And I'm also on staff at Writers Books, so I'm very excited to be here today. So I have a couple pieces of fiction that I wanted to read for you today. Two of them are flash fiction, and one is just a short fiction piece. Just some background about my writing before we get started. I'm not one who really likes to share a lot of inspiration as to where my writing came from. I feel like pieces should just be able to stand alone without an explanation. So I'm not really going to talk a lot about how the pieces came to be, more so just reading them to you today. So again, the first piece is going to be called Postpartum. Here we go. Trina plugs the tub. As she turns the faucet, water splashes against the mat, suctioned to the porcelain. She drizzles a bottle of Johnson & Johnson across the tub, creating a clean foam. She takes the Elmo towel from the linen cupboard and lays it on the bathroom floor. Her hand in the tub, she tests the water the way she tests his bottles. She sets 3 rubber duckies on top of the bubbles. The baby cries from the bedroom. Yesterday, the baby sat in the grass, poking at caterpillars and squinting into the sunlight. Trina knelt in the grass, framed her son into the perfect shot before she took his photo. She blew a dandelion in the wind. The baby reached after the remnants until she plucked another from the grass and made a new wish. She snapped another photo. The sunlight made the wisps of hair on the top of his head look like white remnants of dandelions. She posted the photographs, lifted the baby, and brought him inside for a bath. On the bathroom floor, she yanked the grass-stained onesie over his head. His skin was indented by the seams of his outfit. She set him in the bathwater and scrubbed the red lines. The baby cried. Her husband Charles rushed in and turned the nozzle so it dripped cold. The water no longer steamed. He took a blue washcloth and soaked it in soap and gently washed the baby's torso. Now alone, Trina picks up her squirming baby. His skin is warm against her side. He smiles with cheeks that hold the weight of her heart. She carries him into the bathroom and kneels beside the tub, setting him in the water. His arms splash through the surge. He reaches for heaps of bubbles, crushing between his nubby fingers. He cries. The baby slips down into the bubbles. His head caresses the porcelain. His wispy hair is damp and dark. His lips touch the water and he squirms like a fish on sun-kissed rock. The rubber duckies swim on. Water splashes up on her, splattering across her t-shirt. She lifts the baby out of the water and holds him to her chest. His soggy head falls against her breast, but he does not latch. He cries into her heart, unheard. The front door smacks shut. The scuff of her husband's dress shoes pries off his feet onto the kitchen floor. She carries the baby into the bedroom and kicks the door behind her. She rocks him back and forth. She smiles into his pinched red face. His shrill cry drowns her out. Charles appears in the doorway, the top button of his dress shirt undone. She sets the baby down on the comforter. Charles picks him up, nestles the baby's head into the crease of her neck, a spot Trina had kissed softly so many times. Trina sits at the edge of the bed, pinching at the comforter, and makes a wish. So that was Postpartum. That one is published in the Roadrunner review. The next piece I'm going to read is another flash fiction piece. It's called 100 Miles Per Hour. 5 miles per hour felt dreadfully slow on the gravel driveway of the White River drive-ins. Mazzie barely had to brake to stop at the ticket window. Charlie, sitting in the passenger seat, passed her a crumpled wad of cash, totaling $9. She took her own wallet out from the glove compartment, the door hitting his knees as it dropped open, and unzipped her wallet to scrounge for more. As she handed the man a handful of bills, crinkling 5s and 1s, he gave her 2 printed tickets. She imagined turning 50, attending scrapbook meets in the Baptist church basement, pasting hand-cut hearts and the tickets to a page. After driving through rows of cars, Mazzie found a vacant space. She parked the car, but left it on and cranked up the volume to hear the previews. She and Charlie crawled over the center console to the back seat. "Here we are," Charlie announced, trying to be clever or ease her tension. He stretched out, wrapping his narrow arm over her shoulders, like a zookeeper holding a snake, but to her, it felt like a boa constrictor tightening its choke. Grammy wants you to come over this Sunday for brunch, he said. My cousins from Delaware are visiting. Okay. A cartoon-striped box of popcorn and a paper soft drink container dance across the screen, singing about White River's refreshment counter. The front seat slightly blocked Mazzie's view. She meddled with the levers, but the seats only reclined so far. Don't worry about it, babe, Charlie said. Mazzie gave up, leaving the seats in an awkward angle. She sat back next to Charlie. As the Pixar logo appeared and the little desk lamp bopped across the screen to trampoline on the letters, Charlie placed his hand on top of her knee. He rested his head on her shoulder, something she always believed worked the other way around. His body heat was overwhelming in the muggy summer air. He was stuck to her like cling wrap. He kissed into her neck, trying to mimic some sort of sucking sensation from characters in movies. His hot breath on her skin sent uncomfortable chills through her. Mazzie twitched, something he mistook for pleasure, and she felt the purple mark deepening on her skin, draining the blood and the feeling until her skin was raw. Charlie came up for air. She wished she could too. I love you, Charlie told her, and without waiting for an answer, targeted another spot on her neck. She held the movie ticket in her hand, picking at its splintering corners and crinkling its perfect flat shape. All right, so that was 100 miles per hour. That one's published in both Gandy Dancer and KAIROS Literary Magazine. The last piece I have for you today is a bit longer. It's a piece of short fiction, and this one is called Wrapped in Flame. Today is Sunday. I wake up in bed alone. On my nightstand is the scented candle Daryl bought me when we first met. It smells like soap and has a giant hole in the wax where the wick is burned. I was working at Yankee Candle, paying attention to an older woman sniffing each individual package of tea lights when Daryl walked in. He wore a baggy white dress shirt, black pants with hints of dog hair, and scuffed dress shoes. He introduced himself and stated that he was there for an interview. I recognized the smell of smoke radiating off his clothes, and the smell tempted me. I walk across the bedroom, which is still a mess. On the dresser are scrunched up bras, an unopened pack of Camels, and a stack of First United Methodist Church of Toby bulletins. On the cover of the bulletins is an image of a cross wrapped in flames. Not long after that first day, I hugged the crumpled sheets to my chest and rolled over in bed, kissing Daryl's cheek. He was facing away from me, stuttering the flickering candle on the nightstand. I wrapped my arms around him. I kissed into his neck. He smelled like sweat, and I'm sure I did too. He mumbled something about church, and I nodded, distracted by his salty taste against my lips. The sanctuary was covered with a stiffy pink carpet. The altar was made of wood, with purple banisters reading "Peace and Goodwill to Men" embroidered in gold. A couple of older women sat in the front, close to the ends of the pews, wearing sweaters. A stitched tapestry hung on the wall, probably made years ago by one of the members of the church. It showcased the United Methodist symbol, a cross, wrapped in flames. I wore one of Daryl's hoodies and an old pair of leggings. My hair was tied back in a messy bun. The congregation shared their concerns of a brother in a mental ward and a nephew going through chemo. Daryl, while being attentive to the preacher, held my hand in the small space between us, like we were hiding something from the Lord. I opened my underwear drawer, which is nearly empty since I haven't done laundry in longer than I can remember. Batting against the sides is one of Daryl's lighters and my wedding ring. I nearly forgot I tucked it away after Daryl left, but there's nothing in the drawer to hide it now. I wanted to get rid of the ring. I can sell it to a jewelry store or a pawn shop. Maybe I can sell it for the gold. They can take fire and heat and force it until it warps. They can form something different, something new. Long Bay was a small, secluded beach without a lifeguard on Sundays. Cigarette butts burrowed in the sand like crabs, and Pepsi bottles floated on top of the water like dead fish. We settled at one of the picnic tables, red paint chipping off its splintering wood. After snacking on Cheetos, condensation collecting on our half-drunk Pepsi bottles, we held hands and talked about how hot the day was and how careless we were to forget sunscreen. Eventually, we took a walk, hand in hand. The rocks and bottle caps crunched under our sandals. We chatted about how we were stocking fall fragrances on the shelves midway into summer, and next we'd be in the Christmas displays. I told him how I lit a cedar candle every Christmas Eve alone in my apartment. He promised I'd never spend another holiday alone. He took a small jewelry box out of his pocket. As the sun began to set, we settled on the opposite side of the beach at a small fire pit to celebrate our engagement. Daryl spent several minutes fascinated by the sparks he'd created between the twigs and the brush. I sat on the sand, teasing him about how long it took him to start an actual fire. Eventually, flames engulfed the pit. By the time we got home, my body was sunburned, all except for bikini lines and the small band of skin around my ring finger. I step into the kitchen, wearing only an old t-shirt and 2-day worn panties. My feet are cold against the linoleum. I haven't felt like eating in days. Opening the pantry, I notice the choices are slim. I find granola bars, canned beans, potato chips, and an open bag of Lucky Charms. On Sundays, our daughter Laura would climb into bed with Daryl and me. She would wedge her squirmy little body in between us, puff out her lip, stare me down with her lazy eye, and tell me I needed to wake up because she was absolutely starving. I was never much of a cook. The pancakes were always a little too black and the bacon a little too soggy, but Laura was satisfied with Lucky Charms. Daryl would join us dressed in tan dress pants and a polo. He would kneel, handing Laura a tie that matched his shirt, and she would knot it for him. Then she would put on her sparkly sandals because they made her feel like a princess, and because she insisted she had to look nice for church. Daryl always offered to let me tag along with them, but this was Laura's time with her father. I would meet them at Long Bay for lunch. I open the freezer. TV dinners are piled on top of each other. I take one: chicken, broccoli, mashed potatoes. The cool air from the freezer leaves goosebumps on my arms, but I barely feel them. Mommy, I'm cold. Laura shivers as I dry off her arms and legs and wrapped her body in a Mickey Mouse beach towel. Her hair formed into peaks on her shoulders. A breeze tickled her legs and goosebumps appeared. Daryl, I think her eye looks worse. Look at this, I said. I planted her damp body on the picnic table next to a pack of Daryl's cigarettes. He sat at the table, flickering a lighter on and off. Sweetie, look at Mommy. I lifted Laura's chin. I think we need to take her to a doctor. Daryl shrugged off my concerns, finally lighting that cigarette. Kid's got bumps and bruises. She probably just hit her eye against something. It was nothing to worry about. I balled the used cling wrap in the lunch bag and tossed the crust of Laura's sandwich to the seagulls. I picked up the bag and Laura and walked to the SUV, waiting for Daryl to take the cue, toss the butt, and follow. I rip open the cardboard and slide the plastic tray from the box. I toss the tray in the microwave and press start. The microwave hums. I walk across the kitchen to the corner where Laura's dollhouse still sits. I pick up one of the dolls and a tiny hairbrush and comb through the doll's hair. We used to dress up Laura's dolls when I made dinner. Now her Barbies sit in the bathtub, stand by the stove, lie in their beds, carrying on. At home, Laura was sitting on her knees in front of the dollhouse. Daryl was settled on the couch, cigarette perched between his fingers. Typically, I'd tell him to take it out on the porch, but today I needed him inside with me. I sat next to him, wrapping his free arm around my shoulders. The CAT scan came back positive. They called it retinoblastoma. After a long explanation about autosomal dominant gene patterns, they said a tumor was growing on her left eye, making it heavy and lazy and darker than its natural brown color. She would need weekly treatments. It was a genetically inherited cancer. There was a 50% chance any future children we had would inherit it. At that moment, I knew I would never have another baby. Daryl didn't object. He smudged the butt into the ashtray on the coffee table and wrapped his arms around me. After brushing Barbie's hair with one of Laura's small plastic brushes, I stand. I walk into the bathroom. It still smells like smoke. Daryl's work clothes are piled in the hamper in the closet. It's almost as if he's here. The SUV sat in the driveway for a few minutes, headlights hitting me through the bedroom window's blinds, before I heard the front door of the house clasp shut. I never locked it anymore. He shuffled past the bedroom. The nursery door creaked open, catching slightly on the carpet. He was checking on Laura, since he'd missed tucking her in and giving her a kiss goodnight. He came into the bedroom, smelling like smoke. I could only see shadows of his movement, shoving his jeans down to his ankles, fishing a t-shirt from the overflowing laundry basket. He lifted the covers and slid into bed. His hands were ice cold. The little hairs on my bare legs bristled. I couldn't remember the last time I'd shaved. If Laura weren't sick, he wouldn't have been trucking loads late at night. He'd have been here, helping me convince her to brush her teeth before bed. If Laura weren't sick, simple chores like dishes and laundry might have tops playing with littlest pet shop figurines in the living room. And if Laura weren't sick, I definitely wouldn't have felt the need to go to church the next morning. "Good morning, Laura," the greeter said, handing her a bulletin with an image of a lit candle on the front. "Good morning, Mr. Parker," Laura replied. Daryl took the bulletin from Mr. Parker and wished him a good morning as well. I faked a smile and accepted my bulletin, holding Laura's hand. She led me to where she and Daryl sat every Sunday. Laura sat between Daryl and me. It was just as I remembered. Same stuffy smell, same shriveled people, same dusty tapestries of crosses wrapped in flames. The service began. Daryl took a pen out of his front breast pocket and handed it to Laura, and throughout the service they played tic-tac-toe on the back of her bulletin. She let me play a few rounds too. During the concerns portion of the service, Daryl held on to my hand as he updated the congregation on Laura's treatments. All eyes were on us, the struggling family with the sick daughter. They followed his petition with, "Lord, hear our prayers." I began to sweat. At the end of the service, the people rose from their seats, hugging one another to start conversations. When Daryl started chatting with a man sitting a few pews ahead of us about a trustees meeting, Laura showed me around the sanctuary. Each stained glass window had a candle in its sill, and Laura got to blow each one out at the end of the service every Sunday. "I don't know who does it when I don't feel good," Laura told me. Once the sanctuary was nearly empty, Daryl asked if I was ready to go. I suggested he take Laura out to the car and get her buckled. I'd be out in a minute. He obliged. I approached the steps to the altar. I knelt on the pink carpet and stared up at the Methodist cross. The cross was dim. The candles surrounding me were extinguished. "Dear God," I began, and then stopped. One of the altar candles was still lit, one Laura must have overlooked. "She's just a little girl. Just a little girl." I squeezed my hands together, not bothering to wipe away the tear under my eye. "This can't be how it ends, please." I stood and approached the altar, blowing out the single flame. The microwave beeps. I leave the bathroom. I open the microwave and pull out the dinner. The plastic tray burns my hand, but I don't notice until my skin begins to turn pink. Setting down the tray, I run cold water and let my hands sit. I dry my hands on the dish towel wrapped around the refrigerator handle. On the door, the number for the hospital is scribbled in my messy handwriting on a pad of paper with floral borders. I rip off the top sheet, crumple it, and toss it towards the waste paper basket. The next sheet has more scribbles. I rip that one off too, and the next, until there's no trace of any scribbles. I'm surrounded by balled up paper wads. Daryl asked me if he could take a turn taking Laura for her treatments. The day before, he had taken Laura to the park to play catch. She had come home exhausted, but before I could mention to Daryl that she didn't have the energy of a typical 3-year-old anymore, he had turned on Sesame Street in the living room, and she had fallen asleep against his chest. "You need to bring her straight home afterwards," I told him. "She needs her rest if she's going to recover." He questioned if she was ever going to recover. He couldn't remember the time before she was sick. The medical bills were piling. The odds of climbing out of debt were questionable. He was working all the time to pay for her next treatment. "Laura needed an escape from her cancer," he said, a small glint in his eye. I needed an escape from chores and doctor visits. He needed an escape from long hours on the road. He could take her out for burgers after the treatment. I always took her through the Burger King drive-thru on the way home, knowing I would have time to make something. And Daryl would pick up something from a gas station on the way to work. But he meant real burgers, at one of those sports bars, loud, drunk sports fans hollering at televisions. Then he would take her somewhere fun. He Googled some parks close to the hospital with playgrounds and beaches. He found a tackle shop where he could take her to buy her first fishing pole. He could teach her to cast off the dock. I said no. "Don't force her. She doesn't know her limits. As her dad, you have to recognize when it's too much." I gave him a hug, wanting to feel him wrap his arms around me. I missed him. It takes him a minute to reciprocate. He holds me down and I feel like screaming. I want to see her play again. I want Daryl to teach her how to hook a worm and to catch her first fish. But I know now's not the time. When I let go, he told me he needed a smoke and stepped outside. I let him take her to her next appointment. I open the junk drawer in my kitchen island. A marble rolls across the base. A pair of scissors slide, running into an assortment of crayons and rubber bands. I take out another pad of paper, this one with stars around the border, and put it on the fridge. On the fridge are an assortment of letter magnets. Laura used to sit on the floor, customizing words with the letters while I boiled water for spaghetti on the stove. There's also a crayon drawing of Daryl and me on each side of Laura, outlined in red, holding onto her hands the way we used to swing her between us when we walked down the sidewalk. There is a sun in the top curling corner. I remove the small magnets in the corners of the picture and take it down. While they were gone, I stopped at Sam's Club and stocked up on Laura's favorite treats: strawberry yogurt, pistachio ice cream, crunchy Cheetos, bananas, chocolate milk. I pick myself up a TV dinner and make it home in time to watch soap operas. It was getting late and I decided to take a quick bath before they got home. After filling up the tub with steamy water and using a few drops of Laura's lavender bubble soap, I set my ring on the dish on the sink, sat in the tub, leaned back, and relaxed. The water was hot against my skin. My hands and feet started to prune. I barely noticed it had been over an hour before I got out. Typically, Laura and I would have been home by then, but Daryl probably stopped somewhere to treat her for dinner. I wasn't prepared to fight him over it. But soon it was after 9 and they still weren't back. I got out of bed and walked through the house to the kitchen. On the refrigerator was the phone number for the hospital. I dialed. I explained to the secretary that I was just checking in to see how Laura's treatment had gone. The secretary informed me that my husband had called earlier to postpone the treatment until tomorrow morning, that our family wanted to spend the day camping alongside the bay. She emphasized the excitement Daryl expressed to be spending time with us, since our lives had been consumed by long hours of treatment and work. I thanked the secretary and hung up. On Sunday, court is not in session. The judge puts aside the fact that a 3-year-old girl was murdered. He travels off to his beach house along the bay, bobs across the water in his boat, and pokes a plastic fort around a fruit platter. I thought if Laura was going to die, it would be in a hospital bed. Instead, the charred ashes of her body were found floating in a plastic storage bin on Long Bay. Daryl's body wasn't found until 3 days later, with a bullet in his head and a lighter in his pocket. Forgetting the TV dinner, I head back to the bedroom, with the drawing folded in my hand. The bulletins sit on my dresser. I can't stand to see the cross. I take the pack of Camels off the dresser. I tear through the plastic. I open my underwear drawer. I take out one of Daryl's lighters. The scented candle still sits on my nightstand. I flick on the lighter and light the stub of the wick. I sit on the bed. Slipping one of the cigarettes out of the box, I flick on the lighter again. I study the flame. I set down the pack. I unfold the drawing of our family. I set the flame to the edge of the paper. The corner curls up first, the wax of the crayon sun singed black. Then the flame engulfs Daryl. Now it's just me and Laura. The flame takes her next. It's too late. I put the page on the floor and stomp out the flame. All right, and that was Wrapped in Flame. That one's published in the Merrimack Review. So that's all I have for you guys today. I want to thank you all for watching, and I want to thank Writers and Books again for sponsoring this series, and I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much.